Welcome to episode 116 of Powerline podcast. My name is Ryan Lucas. I'm your host. Welcome aboard. Thanks for joining me. If you're a longtime listener, I appreciate you. You know I appreciate you. Thank you very much for tuning in. If this is your first time watching or listening, welcome. I hope you get some value out of this episode. All right, I've been doing this for a little over 4 years now, and I'm starting to get reached out to with these amazing stories. This week's guest is Noah Edmonds. Just DM me on Instagram and was like, hey, I'm a vet. I've got this really unique story that I think your audience would benefit from. So we jumped online, recorded an episode, and wow, was it ever a powerful episode. I know if you're a veteran, you've experienced things that us civilians just haven't gone through with regards to things you've seen and done. And Noah is definitely been there with you guys. So I'd love for you to listen to and watch and listen to his journey into the Powerline industry and why it's so impactful and why it's so powerful. I know you're going to get some amazing value out of this episode. And heck, even if you're not a veteran, I bet you know one, or maybe you've gone through something similar just in regular life that you've dealt with in your life. So anyway, without further ado, let's jump into 116 with Noah Edmonds. All right, Noah, I always appreciate people reaching out randomly online and just saying, hey, what's up? I would love to be on the show. I think it takes a lot to do that, and I just think it's really cool. So appreciate you doing that, and welcome to the show.
Appreciate it. I've been looking forward to it all week, and hope that I can offer some value. So.
Oh, heck yeah. Everybody's got value to add. Everyone's got a story. That's what's so cool about this.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about your story then. Let's rewind it way back like we usually do on the show. If you've heard it before, I like to start from the beginning. So tell me a little bit about where you're from.
I'm from Anderson, South Carolina, is where I was born. Grew up with, both my parents. I went to a small Christian school there in town, and went all the way from the time I could go to the daycare all the way till I graduated. I stayed in the same school and grew up with some of the same people. So that was kind of a different experience. So I feel like a lot of people, they have 300 people in their one class, where we had a big class for our school and there was only 30. And so, I knew everybody's parents. I knew everybody's grandparents. I knew their siblings, and so it was kind of a neat experience with that. My mom, she worked at the school, and she was like the PE teacher and the volleyball coach. And then she ended up running the daycare for a while when I got older. But my dad, he worked for, it started out with Southern Bell, and then it was Bell South. And then AT&T bought him out. He's worked with AT&T for about 45 years. And he's been on the line crew with AT&T for, I think, like 44 years. So, yeah.
That's intense. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Gotta hand it to him. That's wild.
Yeah, he loves it. He's 60-something years old, and he's out there climbing poles and working the bucket and, building all their stuff every day. So
that's incredible. I can relate going to a small school like that. My parents pulled me out of public school just because I really sucked in school. I was having some learning disability issues or whatever. So public school just wasn't the place. And they put me in a private Christian school. There wasn't much options in small town I came from. So they put me in that. And like my graduating class was, I think, like we graduated 15 or 16 of us. So I could totally relate to that small school feel.
It's different. I begged and begged and begged to go to the bigger high school down the road. I wanted to go and play baseball for them. And they always would just tell me, no, you need to stay. And I be honest, now looking back, I'm glad I stayed. I think I got probably a better education from that smaller school, and even just the closeness of all my friends and stuff. It's been worth it. So
yeah, I could say the same. I played ice hockey, same, just different sport, but I played ice hockey quite competitive, and like all my friends went to the big public school, and you're showing up at practice and games, and you're totally lost as to what's going on in their world because you're not at their school. And like there was struggles there, but like you said, I agree with you. Looking back now, I think like it provided a decent education. And I don't know if it's high school. Like, what do you really learn at high school anyway?
Exactly. At the end of the day, it's really not that big of a deal. It just feels like a big deal at the time. It's your whole world,
100%. We talked a little bit offline there, and you shot me a text when you reached out about your military experience. I'm curious when that kicked in life and why.
Yeah. So I, talking about that school and stuff, my senior year, me and 2 or 3 of my other buddies, we went to it's called Tri-County Tech, a little tech school right up the road, and we were going to test in and try to do some extra college classes, and try to knock some of them out because we had done enough credits where we'd get out at like 12:30 every day our senior year. And so I went up there with them and started to try to test in, and all of a sudden me and I think there was 4 of us, and 2 of them got in and 2 of us didn't, and I was one of the 2 that didn't. And I was like, well, dang, I said, maybe I'm not smart enough to go to college, like if I can't even test into this like this crazy little tiny algebra math class for college, I don't know about this, and so it kind of discouraged me a little bit. And so I ended up, my dad was always big into like Civil War history, and he was big into airplanes and stuff. When I was growing up, I had an airplane ceiling fan and airplanes hanging in my room, and I always had toy airplanes and stuff. And so I always kind of liked that, and I always liked being in high places, climbing trees and doing, just getting up high above everybody else. And so like, well, maybe I'll look into, the military and stuff. And I started looking at, the Air Force has, combat control, and then they have, PJs, pararescue. And I looked into doing some of those things. But I ended up getting hurt. I played soccer all through high school too. And I ended up getting hurt and had to have surgery on my foot, and that kind of slowed me down a little bit. And so I started looking, and they had this thing called aircraft loadmaster. And loadmaster, he's in charge of all of the loading and unloading of the plane, like cargo planes and stuff. And so I was like, that'd be pretty cool, maybe I could get on like a C-17 and go down there and live in Charleston or some place like that and have a blast. So I ended up applying, and I actually knew the recruiter, so she kind of helped me out and made sure that I could apply, and I ended up getting that loadmaster position, and went to basic training. That was a whirlwind. The second night I was there, I had like the very first panic attack of my life. I was freaking out, laying up on this top bunk of the bed, and I was like, I'm never going to go back home, and it's going to be the same. Like my life, just like that life behind me just ended, and I can never go back to it again. And that just like sent me spiraling there for a minute. But I was really close to wanting to hop up out of the bed, and I thought that my training instructor slept in like the barracks with us, but he didn't. I didn't know. I just had no idea. And I wanted to get up and go tell him I quit. I'm going home. This is dumb. I don't want to do this. But then I started thinking, I was like, you know what? There's this dude, I don't even know his name, but there's this dude that's sleeping underneath me that in the morning he's going to need my help to make his bed. And so I need to stay, and that way I can help him make his bed. And that's what got me through it. I was able to push through, go to sleep, and I just kept going and kept building off of that. Eventually I ended up becoming what's called the dorm chief of the flight. So flight is like our group of guys that are all training together. There's 50 of us. And I ended up becoming the dorm chief. So it was the training instructor, and then he would talk to me, and I was in charge of the rest of the 50 guys. And so, it ended up working out good, and I was in a leadership role, and I stayed that way. There was one dorm chief before me, and he ended up getting fired, and that's why I got his job. But I stayed it for the rest of the 8 weeks we were there.
So you just like literally, you just broke it down into small bite-sized chunks, and that's what...
Yeah, I had to. I had to, because it was all just overwhelming.
Where did you get the knowledge to do something like that? Or like, did it just come to you?
I think with soccer, I would do that a lot because, you know, with soccer, we would run at least a mile before every practice. And I would always joke with the coach because it would be 5 laps around the soccer field. And every single time, I probably got on his nerves, but I'd be like, 4 laps, right? No, you know, it's 5. Okay. But I always knew that it was like, okay, you know, we'll just take it 1 lap at a time. You know, all right, I did 1. All right, I got 4 more. All right, I did 2. All right, well, I got 3 more. You know, and once I did 3, I was like, well, shoot, I've already done more than half load. I can do this, you know, and I just kind of break it down like that. And I think that's probably how I was able to break that situation down too.
Running is actually, running is a great example of like something that can train you to do that. That's 100%. I always told everybody that I'm not a runner. There's been moments in my life, like when I was going through my divorce, I picked up running as something just to like, but I'm 5'9", freaking 200 pounds. Like I'm not built like a runner, right? But that's all like, that's what I would do too. Like, okay, just stop sign, get to the stop sign. All right, get to the end of the streak. Okay, get to that little sidewalk patch over there. Get to that tree. And pretty soon you put together a couple miles. You're like, all right, I got this. That's great.
Yeah, and then you feel great when it's over with too. So,
and is that the case? That's the case, obviously, for you during basic as well. Like you start putting some time between when you showed up and.
Oh yeah. By the time I graduated basic and I was, you know, getting ready to leave and stuff, I was like, you know what, I could do this. Yeah, I could go back through another 8 weeks if I needed to, you know, because a crazy thing about basic is basically you don't have to think anymore. You just turn your brain off and you listen to what they say. And as long as you do what they say, you get to go. You don't have to think about when you're going to go shower. You don't think about when you're going to go eat. You don't think about what you got to do for that day. You just do what they tell you to do. And so it's kind of, if you can break it down to that, you just go on autopilot. All right, let's just go over here and do this real quick. All right, let's go over here and do this real quick. It's pretty easy.
I'm laughing because I just watched Forrest Gump a couple days ago again. And that's literally him. Just I felt it was pretty basic. All I had to do was what they told me to do and make my bed real nice.
There you go.
Oh, that's
being
awesome.
dorm chief too, I didn't even have to make my bed. I had a guy that come over and make my bed for me. So,
what do you think it was that took you to that leadership position?
I'll be honest. I was sitting there and I was scared, you know, because like I said, I had just kind of gone through this little panic attack, and they fired that kid, and that kid that was running it, he was pretty bad. He was struggling with he didn't have like the respect of the other people. Just the way that he would talk to people made them not want to do what he told them to do. Yeah. And so then the training instructor, we call him TIs. The TI ended up firing him. And he went around and he asked a couple of people. He didn't ask me. He asked a couple of people, hey, are you going to step up? Are you going to do this? And he walked by me and eyed me, and he turned and started walking around the corner, and he asked one other person. He's like, what in the world? Why will nobody step up and do this? And so finally I was like, heck, I'll do it. And he came back around and he looked at me and he said, you see what happened to the last guy? He said, I'm not firing another one. He said, if you fail, you're getting recycled. You're going back a week or two to a different flight. And I was like, crap, what did I just get myself into?
Dang.
But he put a lot of pressure on me, but it was fun.
That's dope. Walk me through some more of your military experience then. You go from basic to what?
Once I finished basic, I went to what we called it. It was just more training, and it was like a pipeline of training that we would go through. I stayed in Lackland in Texas for a little bit, right there in San Antonio. I stayed there for a couple months. The pipeline was real backed up. They had hired a bunch of load masters, and we couldn't get them all through, so we had to just kind of sit and wait for a little while. And once I finished that, then I went out to Washington, Spokane, Washington, actually, and did survival school out there, SEER school. And that was an experience. I'd never been out to the West Coast. Yeah, it's not even the West Coast. It's like the Idaho side of Washington, but that's the farthest west I'd ever been. And it was beautiful. I couldn't get over like the trees, and then when we were flying in, just how green the trees were, and like the rivers and creeks and stuff were like crystal clear, like blue waters running down rocks and stuff, you know. Out here where I'm from, all of our water, all of our rivers and lakes are like red, you know, mud. So that was pretty wild. I was out there, I think around like March. And so it was still kind of get cold at night, but it was pretty reasonable during the day. You know, we spent the night out there in the woods, I think about eight days out there. And then they picked us up and took us into like a mock concentration camp and taught us how to, like, you know, get through interrogations and, you know, get out of restraints and do all this kind of stuff. It was a pretty wild experience too. But we made it through all of that and ended up going to Pensacola, Florida, and I did water survival down there. And that was just a quick, like, little week trip. And they took us out on a boat, gave us this little raft that we had to blow up. But the whole time we're riding out there in this little harbor, they're playing Jaws and telling us all these stories about all these big sharks they've been pulling out of the water and all that kind of stuff. And they're like, all right, now go hop in. We'll be back in a couple hours.
Dude. Oh, I don't know how you survive that. I think I would have just took a big gulp of water and died right there.
I was sitting out there. There's probably 150 of us out there, but I was like, you know, if a shark's gonna bite anybody, it's gonna be me.
Bro, I don't know. The ocean freaks the shit out of me. I love the ocean, but I spent a bunch of time on the ocean being from the West Coast here, either fishing or my dad had a big boat for a while. We'd go just like up the coast, and I just seen some gnarly shit. Most of the time it's killer whales that I see doing like crazy stuff. Like those little buggers, man. They apparently really haven't attacked human beings too much because they figure there's some sort of correlation between the two. Killer meets killer, and they respect each other or something. But still, they're ruthless little animals.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I saw a video the other day, I think online, where like this killer whale came up and jumped right up there or they were following a boat or something. There's a couple of them that was going in the wake behind the boat and stuff. It's crazy. We don't have to worry about anything over here, but
have you seen them like flip a seal off an iceberg and stuff? Like they'll work together to create a wave and smash the ice or with their tail, or like rock the waves so it flips the iceberg. Like it's crazy shit just to eat the seal. Yeah. Dude, they're smart. They're smart little buggers, and they're ruthless. Ruthless. After all your training, where do you end up, and any deployments?
Yeah, so I during all this training, I got to put together like a little dream sheet of where I wanted to go. And so I'm filling out all these C-17 bases. I'm like, I want to go. First pick would be Charleston, South Carolina, and second pick would be like, I think there was one out in California that I was like, that'd be pretty. I wanted to be on the coast somewhere. I always wanted to be near the ocean. And there was one even out in Hawaii. I was like, screw it. If they want to send me to Hawaii, I'll go, And then I got my sheet back, and everybody else in my class got like their first or second pick. And all of a sudden I'm reading mine, and it says Abilene, Texas, Dyess Air Force Base. And I'm like, where the crap is that? I've never even heard of this place before. And it's like geographically right in the center of Texas. It's about 2.5, 3 hours west of Dallas. There's nothing out there. And but it's on C-130s, and that isn't even the plane that I wanted. But I got out there and got to meet everybody, and a couple of my buddies from training ended up out there with me, and I loved it. I wouldn't have traded my plane for a C-17 at all, because we're kind of the C-130 is kind of like the blue collar of the cargo planes in the military.
Okay.
We're the smallest big plane is the way that I've always said it. But we go into all the dirty, nasty spots, the spots that these bigger planes can't get into. And the load masters, we load all of our cargo actually sometimes on like the C-17s, and then they have another one called a C-5 where like other people will load the plane, but the load master will just come in and just make sure it's right, And so it was a lot of fun. I ended up going, 20, it would have been 2015 was my first deployment to Afghanistan. I went out there to Bagram, and then, once we got out there, we flew all over. We went to all bases in Bagram, and then we would go to all the little FOBs, the smaller little forward operating bases and stuff, and take cargo and people and mail and, all kinds of different stuff around. And it was, it amazed me how beautiful actually Afghanistan is. If it wasn't, such a war zone all the time, it wasn't always in conflict, they would probably have like a booming tourist, attraction just with the mountains and skiing, and it's beautiful. It's full of history out there. That's where like the world started, and so it was pretty cool to see. And my first deployment was very laid back, easy. I didn't see a lot of like action of really anything at that time. But my second deployment, that was a total different story. I went back. Between my first deployment and my second deployment, I ended up meeting my wife, and came down and proposed to her. And actually, I met her before my first deployment. That's what happened. I met her before my first deployment, and came back from that one, and I ended up proposing to her. But on the trip that she lived here in South Carolina, and I was living in Texas, on the trip that I came back and proposed to her, I actually got her pregnant at the same time. And I was getting ready to deploy again.
Dang.
And so I proposed to her on April the 11th. And then like in between, like a couple of weeks after that, find out that she was pregnant. And I'm getting ready to deploy in May. And March, April. Yeah, no, so it was March 11th. It was March 11th when it happened. I'm getting ready to deploy in May. And I came back April the 21st and got married because I needed to get her on my insurance before I left, so she could go to the doctor and do all that. And so that was a whirlwind. And then when we went back, that was the deployment where it was like during the fighting season.
Mm-hmm.
And, they were shooting at us, and, with whether it was just AKs or the bigger, I can't remember what they call the big ones. But it was some kind of like a bigger AK basically that they would shoot at us, and then they would have their RPGs that they would shoot at us and stuff like that while we were coming in, because that C-130 flies low and slow. That's kind of like the
perfect target
saying for it. Yeah. And so that was pretty hectic. I wasn't expecting that because my first one was pretty easy, but
that must have been wild too, like knowing now that you've got some responsibilities at home.
Yeah. I think that changed a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to jump on you.
No, it's all good. I'm just thinking it's almost like you probably went back to your days of basic training and just started breaking everything down into smaller chunks. Like, all right, let's land this plane.
Yep.
Huh. Wild.
So that's when I basically did exactly what you said. I figured out how to compartmentalize all of this stuff. But in doing that, what I ended up doing was I made a little box in my head, and I shoved all of those circumstances, all those situations that we got into on that second deployment, and I put them in that box, and I locked it. And then when I left, I threw it back there in the back and didn't think about it. Well, then on my way home, though, we got into Germany on my way home, and that box opened up, and I was in trouble. I felt all of these emotions. It's like I took all of my emotions and everything and put them back there in that box, and all these emotions were coming out at one time, trying to deal with all this stuff that I saw and all this stuff that happened while we were there on that second deployment, and I couldn't handle all of it. And I called my wife, and I called my dad. I even called her dad. Her dad was a Army vet too, and was talking to him, and I was just crying. I was bawling my eyes out because I just didn't know. I didn't understand why I felt the way I did, and I didn't know what to do with all of it. And that was kind of the beginning of the end of my military career there, because I dealt with that, or I tried to deal with that for a couple hours that night, and then eventually I was like, nope, I can't do this, and I shut that box back and I threw it back there in the back again. I was done with it. And that came back to bite me in the butt pretty hard. later in life, about a year or two later, when it came to, well, even just a couple months after that, when it came to having my first child. You have your first kid and you hear about dads and moms and everybody talking about how excited they were to, have their first kid and hold their first kid, and how just amazing of a circumstance this is, and how awesome of an opportunity it is to be this little kid's, father. And I held my little girl for the first time and I felt nothing. I came back and I hugged my wife, who I just got married to like a week before I left. I felt nothing. I couldn't figure out how to turn my emotions back on. And we lived like that for probably about 9 months after, where I was just really struggling. I couldn't hardly get out of bed to go to work. I was just in a depression. I just didn't know what to do. I couldn't understand why I couldn't feel love anymore. I couldn't feel fear anymore. I couldn't feel anything. And I ended up having to go and talk to the medical team, and that's kind of a pretty big no-no when it comes to the aircrew world. As soon as you open that door, you're probably not going to be flying very much anymore after that. And I knew that, but I also knew that, yes, I signed up to do my duty for our country and stuff, but at the same time, my family means a lot to me, and I need to figure out how to be right for them. And so I started talking to the mental health, and we kind of started that process and doing some therapy and stuff, and they ended up diagnosing me with PTSD and started med boarding me out. That's what happened. But
dude, I don't think a lot of people realize. I think we all do it to some extent, like obviously your situation, I don't want to minimize it. It's like probably the extreme version of this, but we all like create this box and put our emotions in it and put our shit in this box, even just us civilians here on the day to day. And this is what happens, is like you keep filling this bucket or this box. I've heard it talked about in so many different ways. Actually, one of the guys that I really respect his podcast is James Gearing from Behind the Shield. He's a former firefighter, and he talks to firefighter, first responder, and military personnel of the world. That's basically, and just he's such a advocate for mental health. And he talks about this bucket that you just keep putting your shit in, and nobody knows the size of their bucket, but eventually it just starts to overflow, and it just manifests in so many different ways. And it's so important to like get help, like do what you can do to get help. I just recently had a coworker / friend. I'd worked with him a couple of times. He ended up committing suicide on the job, like a couple months ago. And it's just so sad when like there's help out there for people, like, and it's so tough when you just don't know who to reach out to, or if it just gets to that point. So I don't know, like, commend you. I'm curious to hear the rest of your story, how you pull yourself out of this, because I can't imagine it's an easy thing at all to figure it out.
Yeah. It took a long time, and to be honest with you, I'm still working on all of it. I had this saying where I just didn't feel like me anymore. And I still don't feel like I'm 100% of who I was, and I may never be 100% of who I was. That's just life. You're going to change through life, your for opinions, and even, everything's going to change. But I ended up getting out, and we moved back to South Carolina. Like I said, I grew up in Anderson, and I live in a little town now called Abbeville, which is about 45 minutes south of Anderson. And I had an opportunity to come down, and these people, they let me know, hey, if you come down when you get back, we've got a job for you. It's called SEO. I don't know if have you heard of SEO before?
I'm not sure.
It's
no.
like It's like search engine
Oh,
operator.
okay.
Or
Sure. I got you. Yeah.
yeah. So, like making the
Yeah.
ads pop up and doing all that kind of stuff. And I was
Yeah.
like, all right, cool. And they're like, we make pretty good money doing all this. And I was like,
I
yeah,
thought
it
you were
sounds...
talking some sort of military acronym
No,
again. I was like, I don't know the military version. I know the
Yeah.
computer. Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, cool. Yeah, I'll try it out. And so I came back. I had about a week off and tried to get everybody settled in the house. And then I went to work, and I sat there and showed up my first day, and I'm looking around, and these people were coming in and working at their computers, and they came over and kind of helped me a little bit, but they were going through this big like contract right now that they were really focused on this. And so it was kind of hard for them to break away from what they needed to do and come train me. I had no idea. I barely can type an email, so I was like, well, okay, I'll try to figure it out. I'm pretty smart. And I probably did that for about 2 months, and I went and talked to the boss, and I was like, hey man, I was like, look, I said, I don't know if this is for me. I said, I maybe I need to be back outside or something, because these people, they come in and they'll sit down at 8:00 and work on their computer until lunchtime. I mean, they won't get up, get coffee, get drinks. They won't get up, just stretch. I mean, they're like robots, just typing away. And then they'll go get lunch, and they'll come back and they'll do it till 5:00. And I'm like, I cannot do this. And so he's like, well, that usually when people tell me that, that's their last day. And I was like, well, that's not what I meant to do. I was just trying to let you know that I might be trying to do something else. And so that was done. And here I am. I've got 2 kids and a house to pay for and stuff. And like, oh my gosh. And I ended up getting picked up to go help clear some land, and went out and running chainsaws and running some equipment and cutting down these big pine trees we have out here and clearing land for this guy. And, I was like, all right, this is pretty cool. I could get into this. And I did that for a couple months, and all of a sudden, I guess the money ran up for that guy or whatever. And he let me know one day. He said, look, I'm not going to be able to pay you to come out here anymore. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. Well, then now I'm looking, and I had a uncle that ran a bread route here in town. And so he would get bread from this warehouse and deliver it to the restaurants and the grocery stores and stuff like that. Well, he was getting ready to retire from that bread route. And it's kind of like it's like a contractor job. You buy into this company, and you can have their name and deliver their product, but you make a commission off of it. So my dad, he helped me out, and we bought this bread route from my uncle and bought the truck, and I took off. And I don't know. I thought it was something that I would be able to do, but I knew it wasn't something that I was going to be like in love with. But I was more focused on providing for my family,
Yeah, makes sense.
I can look past my wants to give my family their needs, And so I did that for a little while. And actually, while I was doing that bread route was when I found your podcast back in it was either late 2019, like right when you started, or it was 2020, during COVID and stuff. I found it. And I think I found it because I was already like, I don't think I can do this, because I was sitting there thinking, with this bread route, 20 years from now, I will be doing the same exact thing that I'm doing today, and it will never get any better. It may not get any worse, but it'll never get any better. I'll be in the same spot, driving the same truck, going to the same stops every single day for my life. And I was like, I can't do this either. And so I found your podcast, and I started listening. And that was back when you had you even had the Line Wife edition and stuff like that on there. And I would listen through all these things. And I can't remember which guest it was that said it, but it was one of the guests that was talking about it. It was the Line Wife edition. And she was talking about when her and her husband pulled up into one of the campers, trailer parks or whatever. And they came over and met these people. And her husband goes, yeah, I'm a MF and journeyman lineman, and I was like, now that's cool. I can buy into that. And, and then hearing about all the helicopters and stuff, I never knew about that. I kind of knew about line work a little bit because of my dad, being AT&T and stuff. And so I started talking to my wife, and I was like, I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this bread route forever. I said, I think, it might be better to go ahead and try to get out of that sooner rather than later, and chase this other thing. And by this point, because of all these other jobs that I've had, she was pretty fed up with it. She was like, I don't know. She's like, you're making money here. You might better just stay here and stop, whipping me around everywhere. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try. So I worked it for a long time. I worked it for, I say a long time. It really hasn't been a long time, but maybe about a year and a half. But that is when, to rewind a little bit, losing those first couple of jobs is when I thought I had hit my rock bottom, where I'd smashed. I'd lost 2 jobs right out of the military. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I do this? Why can't I just integrate back in and work? And then I got this bread route, and I was like, okay, we're doing good. And then it kind of started to crumble around me. I lost a couple of stops, and my mental health was going down, because that's an early morning. I was waking up at like 3:00 in the morning to go to work, and
Sure.
I'd be done by like lunchtime. But I've got 2 small kids at the house. I had another one on the way. I had a little boy that was on the way now, and
Dang.
and I was like, man, I don't know. And I was falling deeper and deeper into like another depression again. And it got to the point where I was sitting on my bed one afternoon. My wife and the kids were at her parents' house, and was sitting there, and I was just thinking, maybe I'm just pulling my family down. I'm pulling my wife and these 2 little girls down. I'm making them struggle for my inability to provide, and my inability to even show real love and affection, And I said, you know what? I think they might be better if I was just gone, and they can find somebody else and be picked up by them instead of me dragging them down. And I was sitting in my bedroom on the side of my bed one day, holding my gun, and was thinking about it. But we were getting really close to having my little boy at that time. It was like within a month of having my little boy. And I sat there and I started thinking about him too. And I was like, I'm about to have this little boy, and he's going to need a dad, especially in this, time and age where everything's getting confusing. It's confusing for everybody, girls and boys, but especially boys, I feel like, personally. And I said, he's going to need a dad to show him what's right and wrong, to show him how to be a man. And I said, I don't want to give that up to another man to do that. And I put the gun away, and got back after it and started really, really pursuing getting out of that bread route and getting into the line trade.
Are you doing anything at this point? Like, are you talking to anybody? Are you getting any sort of other sort of help?
So I had started going back to church again, and because I knew I was going down. It was like I was a ship that had a hole in it, and I could see the hole, but I wasn't doing anything about it. And so I had tried talking to the VA a couple of times, and I just couldn't get a match with like my therapist, and a couple of therapists I tried, we just couldn't see eye to eye with my problems. And
Sure.
they tried to put me on some medicine, and I'm not really a big medicine taker anyways, and I didn't like what it was doing to me, and so I wasn't taking it. But I started going to church, and really started leaning on God to help me. After that day that I decided, what, I've leaned on me for long enough. I've burdened my wife for long enough, and I said, I as far as I know, from what I've learned and from what the Bible tells me, God's there for you, and He's not going to let you down. It might not always work out the way you want it to work out, but in the end, it'll work out for good. And so I leaned heavily into God and started praying and reading my Bible and just and just really kind of running after him to help me get out of this situation, both mentally and even with my job, and trying to get into something new. And that seemed to really help me. But I ended up applying for 2 companies, Duke Energy and then Little River, which is where I work now. And I told my wife, I said, I'm just going to go. I'm going to go. We're going to have to lose some money when I get out of this bread route because I paid money in, and I'll just breach the contract and I'll get out. And I'm just going to go. And I said, it just depends on who hires me first, And so I went in, and Duke never got back with me. And Little River called me in. They wanted to interview me. We did a physical interview. You come in and use a braking bit and drive a truck, like a manual truck, and climb a little pole with a harness on to make sure you're not scared of heights, and all
like,
this
check,
kind of stuff.
Check,
like,
check.
Yeah, I got this. This is easy. And then they brought us back in for a like a board interview. There was probably I think there was like 8 or 10 of them in there, and you had to go in and interview with all of them. And that didn't bother me too much either, because of being in the military, I'd had to be in front of a couple boards and stuff. I'm like, all right, I can do this too. And they called me and said that it was between me and one other guy, but they didn't know if they were going to be able to wait for me to be able to get rid of that bread route before that, they needed to hire somebody. And I was like, okay, and I had to go to work. I had to drive back up to Anderson. That's where that bread route was that day, and go pull up my shelves and stuff. I think it was on it must have been a Wednesday, because I didn't work Wednesdays, but I'd go and pull up my shelves to make them look good. And on my way up there, I had just gotten into Anderson, and got an email where Flowers was going to be getting rid of my route, and they were going to run it and sell it off and stuff like that. And so I immediately got back on the phone, and I called up there to Little River, and I was like, look, I said, I don't know if this changes your decision or not. I said, but I can come to work for y'all whenever y'all are ready. I said, I can be there today, I said, I don't know, because you haven't told me you were going to pick me or this guy. I said, I don't know if this is going to change your decision, but I'm willing, able, and ready now. And I think like later that afternoon, they called me back and said, yep, you're hired. And I mean, I'm a Christian, and like I said, I really started getting into my faith then, and I can only give the credit to God for the way all of this worked out at that time. Every little piece moved right when it needed to move. It wasn't when I wanted it to move, because I would have rather had it all lined up and not had to stress about it. But it all moved right when it was supposed to, and I feel like I'm right where I'm supposed to be now.
What did that feel like, getting, like having these pieces of the puzzle move for you in the right direction? And did it feel now like there was a bit of like hope, or like
extreme hope, extreme relief? Here in Abingville, this is a very, very small town, and I didn't know a whole lot about it. I'd only been to Abingville twice before I met my wife. It was by a Matthews bow, and I came down and looked at a motorcycle one time, and that was it. And it's this very, very small town. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows where everybody lives, And I'd been living here in this town for about 2 years now, and nobody knew me. I didn't know anybody, because I worked in Anderson. I would go to Anderson and come back and just live here. And to get into this co-op, they only hire so often, because they can only keep so many people at one time. And it just so happened, I say just so happened, honestly, I think it's, I give the glory to God. I give it to him for letting this happen. But it happened where they were hiring, and I knew one guy that worked here. And he came in, he said that he put in a little word for me, and I interviewed with them, and they said that during my interview, they asked me, they're like, now, why do you want to come work here? Why do you want this job? And I told them, I said, I want to do something that at the end of the day, I can turn around and look at and be proud of. And I just want to help people. Out here as a co-op, we supply power to, the rural communities, people who don't have power at the time. We're super busy right now, always putting in new places, new trailers and stuff like that. But I said, I just want to help people. And he told me, one of the guys that was in that board, he ended up telling me a couple months later after I got hired, he said that right there. He said, I don't know who told you to say that, but that's what got you hired. I was like, that's just the way I feel. I just wanted to, I knew I needed to get out of where I was, and I was willing to do anything it took to do it.
I've got quite a bit of experience. If you've listened to the show, so I've worked with veterans quite a bit and helped vets get into the trade and stuff. And I love that about vets and how it's like, it is a really good industry for you guys for the most part, right? Like,
Yep.
And if you could just find it and find a way in, and that's why I talk about programs like Helmets to Hard Hats is another great one, and the Veteran Electrical Entry Program, the one that I've had the most experience with myself. I'm sure there's a lot of other ones out there, but that VEEP program right now, I get so much online about like, oh, this can't be real. Like, it sounds too good to be true. And I'm like, it does sound too good to be true. To be honest, it's hard to even say that, like, as long as you apply, get accepted, you get free tools, free training, direct entry, guaranteed job with a good qualified company. Like, yeah, it sounds too good to be true, but it's fact. It's like, just take that opportunity, try applying and see what happens, because this industry is like such a good fit for most vets like yourself, right? Like, it's just like it's a direct plug-in, man. Working with, exciting stuff, working at heights, like different every day, helping people, serving, like that's what you guys are built to do. It's just such a good plug-in.
It's amazing how much it transfers over, even just the crew aspect of having the buddies, out there running that bread route. I was a one-man crew, just by myself all the time. I was either listening to I was listening to Joe Rogan, or I was bugging the crap out of my parents or somebody, talking to them, because I just needed to talk to somebody, And then being part of this crew, having a mission again of helping people, providing, quality power with their, fixing their outages quickly, being professional and answering questions that they have, and just being able to go out and sweat and work with your hands and get bloody sometimes. That is everything that I wanted, and I feel like most of the people that are in the military, they all want that same thing. And to be able to find this trade where you can do all of that and make a good living for your family at the same time, it's just icing on the cake. That's where it's at.
Being alone in a truck driving bread around is probably not the best place for a combat veteran, with PTSD and trauma, and like, I can't imagine in your head for every day for 8 to 12 hours a day in your head, no one to talk to. You can't like physically get any of this out of you. Like, I can't imagine that's a good space. I can see why you were maybe at the place you were at, and grateful that, you found something that's a new mission and something you're excited about and that's working out for you, because I'm sure it's made all the difference in the world.
It's made a huge difference, I think. And I've got that little boy now. I've got 2 little girls. I've got a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 1-year-old, and I've got one more that's about to be born.
Dang, dude.
So I'm going to have 4. And then I'm getting snipped. I've already got the appointment to get snipped this coming month, actually. And
good luck with that.
Yeah. Not looking forward to it, but I think it'll be worth it.
Yeah. Bro, I was not to deter you a little bit, but I was the 1 in a million that goes the wrong way.
Really?
Oh, bro, worst experience of my life right there. But hey, story for another day.
No,
that's an offline conversation.
There you go. But this trade, it's something, you were talking about riding around in that truck by yourself and stuff like that being bad for you. You can't be rough with bread. You got to be careful with it. You can't crush it. You can't smush it. But out here, I can tell you what, I still get upset and still get frustrated at things like that. But I've got a hammer or I've got my pliers and I can beat the crap out of one of those poles. And I don't have to worry about breaking it. I don't have to worry about breaking my tools, and I can get over it and just keep on moving, And so even just something like that just kind of helps. But
just that fact of like of service too, like that's from all the vets I've talked to, it's like that's why that's a big piece of why you guys commit yourselves to the military. A lot of it's sometimes just like a place to go when you're young and you're trying to figure out life and all that, but you've got somewhat of a service heart to you and you want to do good for other people. That's kind of why you do it, right? That's what I've got from talking to you guys about it. And so like, that's like the line work can provide that. It can provide that most every day. You can, like you said, just like take that customer aside that's really he's curious about what you're doing, or he's angry with what you're doing, or whatever the situation, and you have the ability to talk to them about it and educate them and serve them, and then walk them right through that process of getting their power restored and getting their life back to normal again. It's like, it's so awesome. It's so awesome.
I've fallen in love with it too. Even just like, I told you way back in high school, I didn't think I was smart enough or anything. And I've really kind of realized through my military training, it made me realize, because I went through all of that training and the lowest grade I made on a test was like 98. I was like, see, so I'm not actually dumb. I just wasn't interested back then, And then even here, I can't get enough of it. I love it. I'm reading it, learning it, listening to your podcast and listening to other podcasts and reading books. And, we, anytime I get a call in my life, they'll tell you that I work probably too much, because it doesn't matter pretty much what's happening. If they call me, I'm going to go work a broke pole, or if somebody needs me to cover their week of call, I'm going to call, I'm going to cover it. And, last year, my very first year at that co-op, I had more overtime hours than anybody else at the co-op. And then this year already, I'm already ahead of everybody by like 100 hours. I made like 100 hours of overtime in July.
Dude,
so,
nice.
I just can't get enough of it.
Well, that's good though. That's really good. What was like, compare training now in line work? Like, how is the whole training process? And
so I've had to learn to slow down. So in the military, we had tech school was what I couldn't remember what it was called, but my training in the military was called tech school. And you go through all of your training, and then you show up at your squadron and they're like, all right, we'll make sure you know what you're doing, but then after that, we're just going to cut you loose and let you go. So being here, and I worked here for a year, and I went to my first year of school. And then I'm coming up in November for my second year of school. And it's like a week long that we go out. It's through Northwest Lineman College, which is who it's like credited through. It's down in Columbia, South Carolina. And so I've had to try to slow down and just let it happen when it's supposed to happen, because I'm wanting to just get more. I want to go to I'll just go to all the schools and come back and work and do what I needed to do, but this isn't really how it works in the line, in the Powerline industry, because you go up there and get yourself killed in 2 seconds, if you don't know exactly what you're doing. So, trying to work on patience a little bit, but I ask, when there's certain things that I know that I might could do and know that I know how to do, I'm not afraid to kind of ask about it. And most of the time they let me go up and do it. And so I have done some things earlier than, maybe I should, but it's all things that are safe, having the grounds on and working it, and doing that. But that's the only way you're going to learn, is actually doing it. So,
yeah, that's the piece of the old school mixed with the new, like the new schools, they're almost taking like that. They're almost being like helicopter parents, right? Even at work, like oh, don't do that, don't touch that, don't like. I get why, because people have abused it and hurt themselves or killed themselves by accident, and they've had issues to deal with that way. But I just like, if you talk to like some of the old school guys that did come up way back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s doing this trade, like they were up doing shit they weren't supposed to do long before. Yeah, exactly. Not that that was right, but there's something to that. It makes it very. I'm not an advocate for free climbing. There's reasons for belts, but the thing with free climbing is like it makes it very real. It's almost like training with live fire, right? Like,
yeah,
it's very fucking real.
Oh yeah,
like you fall off this pole, you're falling off this pole to your, it just does something different. It makes you pay attention differently, and I think we could use a little bit of that somehow. Like,
I liked. I think it was John. How do you say this? John Goddard.
Goodson.
Goodson, that's who it was. Yeah, John Goodson. And he was talking. You asked him about like the training, and he talked about how like going up and just like eeling it. Eeling everything. We call them putting eels, whatever y'all call them. And putting your blankets on and doing all that kind of stuff. Just putting all this out there and wearing your gloves and your sleeves. Yeah, that might be safer, but why don't we just train on how to do it properly and what to look out for? I kind of buy in more to that. Maybe more knowledge of what is going on, what can get you, what can't, how to do these certain things, as opposed to just saying, oh, we're just going to nerf the corners and put these little bumpers up there just in case that way you don't even have to be, you still have to be careful, but it's like putting rubber strips all around your house and putting outlet covers for your kids and all this kind of stuff. Eventually, you might be better off taking all those things off and taking them and letting them stick the pencil in the outlet and let them get shocked one time, and then they'll know not to do it.
I got a funny story that just popped into my head. I talked about this the other day. So I have 3 kids now, but this is when my son Hudson, my middle child, was probably, I want to say maybe 2.5, 3, maybe 3. It was Christmas time. I was in the kitchen, and the living room was right in front of us, and just the Christmas tree was like just around the corner in the living room. It just out of sight. So I'm making some stuff in the kitchen, and Hudson was in the living room just playing. He's okay. He's just playing around the Christmas tree. And I hear this sound, and I'm like, I recognize that sound. Like wah, kind of like this electrical noise. And I'm like, just like ear perked up. I'm just like, I know that sound. What is it? So I ran into the living room, and there's this big black streak up the wall. And we'd had this Christmas ornament on the Christmas tree that was, I don't know why we had it, but it was a frying pan, like a small little toy metal frying pan, a little tiny thing with a plastic handle. Well, for some reason, he had a hold of the handle, and he turned that frying pan upside down and put it across the 2 terminals for the Christmas tree plug-in. It was just hanging over the wall. So, face and neutral right there in the living room, and just like burnt the side of the wall. He was fine because he's hanging onto the plastic handle, nothing. But it kind of like, I come around the corner and his eyes are like big, like
I bet.
Deer in the headlights. Look like, oh, it wasn't me. I'm like, well,
yeah.
See, but that taught him a lesson right there. He didn't get hurt from it, but he could have. And big
and I know it's like going back to what we were saying about like that training and like the eels and stuff. Like I understand that the consequences are higher, obviously, than touching the outlet, but there's got to be a way to get more knowledge into it and to work it safer, I think, as opposed to just covering everything back up. What do I know? I'm not even into my second year yet. It's just me just kind of just pondering things,
Well, it's all valid stuff. Like, I think if I look back at my experience, where a lot of this comes from is like, that's what makes this a brotherhood as well, right? Like, the guy beside you in the bucket's got your back, you got his back, and it's communication, and it's the lines of communication between yourself and the people you work with, right? And it's what can you learn from them, as well as how can you look out for them and how can they look out for you, right? So like that's a big factor that I don't think a lot of people lean on, and I know a lot of safety guys don't lean on that, but that's going to keep you safer than any gut you're ever going to put on, or any heel you're ever going to put on, is the crew around you, right? And as if they're looking out for you, you're looking out for them, and how you can help each other by just communicating, simple communication. Like, okay, I talk about this on a lot of the episodes, but like this thing I learned from bare hand training that it's one of the aspects of bare hand training that I absolutely love, was you lay your job out step by step in bare hand training. Like, and when you're doing bare hand work, it's literally step one is this, and you could have 80 steps on there, and anybody could come onto the job site and you could hand them that piece of paper with the job steps on it. They could start reading, and then they could look up and go, oh, you're at step 14. Okay, I see. Like anybody, it needs to be that simple. And then if you change any step in that procedure, everybody stops. You talk about the change, you discuss why is it better, why do you need to do it, like, and you all agree on what the next step forward are. You write it in there and you sign off on it. Like, okay, that's the extreme version, but like, even let's simplify that down to a distribution crew. We need to stop more, just like pause, not just the two guys up in the bucket, but like just bring the bucket to the ground, get the ground crew, get everybody there. Hey guys, we're making this change really quick. This isn't going to work out. We need to do this instead. You guys cool with that? You got any suggestions? No? Okay, everyone's cool. You know, it's a verbal sign off. Everyone goes back to work. Because now the guys on the ground are looking up going, okay, I know what they're doing up there now. I know how to watch out for them. You know, like I know what the next step is, instead of just the guys in the air making the decision. And now the guys on the ground are like, I don't know what the hell they're doing up there. Like, I'm going to stop watching, right? And then that's how you get into trouble, or it could get into trouble. So I don't know. I really like that aspect of bare hand school. And I think simple things like that could be applied to everyday distribution jobs to make it safer.
Well, we, as air crew, and I don't know anything about like the helicopter work and stuff like that y'all have done, but like as air crew, as a flying on that C-130, it was part of my job to come out and pre-flight that plane. And then, you know, I had checklists to do the pre-flight. I had checklists to do stuff that I needed to do on the plane while we were flying, and even post-flight checklists and stuff like that. But that was that's what I always think about when you talk about this right here, is like, and I've thought about it a good bit since I've been here, like how could we make like a checklist for like the newer guys coming in, starting to run the trucks, or starting to, you know, even just doing like your pre-flight of the truck or whatever, or even just like getting it set up to pick up wire out of the line truck or something, you know, like, is there different ways that we can do that? Because it's the same thing. Like anybody could walk up and see what step they're on, because you look at the checklist, you read through it and see where they're at, and it's the same thing, you know. And then you know that you didn't miss something, you know. But just kind of, I try to use my military background and see if there's ways to apply it here and to help, you know, just to make life easier for me and everybody else I work with, you know.
There's so much of your military experience that can be applied, and not just applied to line work, but I always encourage you guys to like use that to better educate us civilians that have just come into this job, and like we're learning on the go and learning on the job. You have so much like life experience and experience doing things that you can bring with you that you don't even realize. Like another great example is just speaking up, you know, like you're probably very comfortable with just, you know, speaking up like, hey, I noticed this thing, you know, like what's going on here? Whereas like there's a lot of guys that just coming in, they're extremely timid because they've never had that sort of even life experience before to know what to say or when to say, or like, am I going to get, you know, whatever, am I going to get fired? Like, is everyone going to hate me? Like that goes out the window in the military. Like you've been hazed, you've been shot at, you've been like everything, right? I just, episode coming out this week is with a fella named Brandon Hill, and Brandon was in a helicopter accident. He was doing a touch and go transfer off of it was a wooden H structure or a steel lattice. I can't remember, but he was got back onto the helicopter, and they had a rotor strike, and the bird went down, landed opposite side of him. So he survived. He was mangled pretty bad. So I asked him, like, what's something that, you could have done different? And he's like, I knew that I should have spoke up. I should have said something. He's like, we had comms, when that pilot landed them on the structure. It was a new pilot, a new company. He wasn't doing it the same way as the other pilot was. He was really, really close. And he remembers saying, like, when they dropped him off on the structure, the tail rotor was really close then. So he should have, stopped work, got on comms, warned that pilot, talked it through. Maybe they could have done something, maybe not, but maybe, it could have done something. But like, speaking up, that's just another thing, like, long story short, that's another thing that military, experience you can bring to line work, is just like bringing things up, talking about them, noticing things too, right?
Yeah.
Like,
that attention to detail is strong.
Yeah. When you're getting shot at with rockets, like, your attention to detail is razor freaking sharp, I bet, like, yeah, dude. What else do you think that you could bring to the trade?
I think I kind of just said it right there. Something that I really lean into, and something that I kind of told the guys when I first got here. They asked me a couple of times, they're like, have you done any of this before? Because, like, you're kind of, I'm not trying to like toot my own horn, I guess you'd say, but they would say, you're kind of good at it sometimes, or you kind of act like you know what you're doing. And I would tell them, like, my first like year of the military, they just kind of teach you how to learn. They don't teach you anything except for how to learn.
Interesting.
And it's like the attention to detail. It's the, making sure things are done right, perfect. That TI I used to have, he would say, perfection is the goal, but excellence will do. And, just kind of thinking in those terms. And so, when I first got here, I was watching everybody. I was watching everything they did. I was finding out who did stuff and who took pride in their work and who just did stuff just to get it up there, which one looked better, how the way it looked, and just watching all of that. And so, like, one of the storms we had, I'd been here like a month, and I ran up a pole, climbed up a pole. Very first time I'd ever crossed over crossed over a transformer on a pole and pulled up the neutral. And with the hot hoist and everything off my hooks, I climbed like 2 or 3 poles before then, but I just climbed up it. And he's like, you know how to do this? And I was like, well, I've seen it done. I said, if I have any questions, you can probably talk me through it. And so I went up there and did it, and got it done. But I think stuff like that. And then while I was in too, I became an instructor, load master. And I've heard you talk about some of this stuff a little bit here recently about like teaching and like the adult teaching. You talked to that guy a couple of weeks ago about that, and that's what my instructor school was. I was shocked kind of when I got there. I thought when I got there they were going to open up this like whole new checkbook and show me all these cool things to do and stuff. No, instructor school was all about how to teach people and the different people that you would get. So like the instructors would come in, they would give you the subject, or they would say, all right, this is what you're going to be teaching the student at the time. And they would give it to us the night before. We'd kind of get together what we wanted to say and how we wanted to teach it. And they'd come in, and you never knew what kind of student they were going to be. They might be a good student and just go right along and be good to go. And then they might be one that doesn't want to do anything. And then they might be one that wants to do everything but's dumb, and so they teach you how to interact, how to guide and refocus all of these different types of people. And that was what instructor school was. I learned nothing new about the plane that I didn't already know. I just learned how to teach people.
So important. I think that's so cool. That's definitely from my experience teaching people, as teaching adults. It's tough. Like that was one of the hardest jobs I've ever done. Probably a lot just because of my personality and things like that. Like actually getting up in front of a room of line students is like, it's a hard thing. And adults, you know, it's a hard thing to do. I went through a little bit of a class. It was only a week training on, is this like a condensed version of like how to teach adults in a classroom. And even just the few things I picked up in that 1 week, like they really work and they really help. Like, like if you've got a guy in the classroom that's a talker, you know, he's always distracting the people beside him and talking, and instead of just like calling him out, just like walk over and stand in front of him and just keep instructing. But just your presence in front of him, like he's all of a sudden all the attention's towards, he's going to stop talking. He's going to stop talking to the people beside him. Like just little things like that. And I would test it out and I'd be like, damn, this works. I don't even have to yell at him. I could just shut him up by like walking over and standing beside him. It's perfect.
Yeah, that's cool.
Dang.
It's been fun seeing how everything translates. And then I've even got to be competitive again. That's something that I lost when I got out of high school.
100%.
But I got to compete in the co-op rodeo last year, or this year, I guess, earlier in March this year. And so that was pretty fun. I went and competed as a apprentice. I did pretty good. I think there was like 80 apprentices. I ended up getting I was like around the 50s, I think, but I'd never done it. And then I screwed up one of my events. I did the hurt man. And usually when we all do hurt man, you're wearing your rubber gloves and you go out there and go get him. Well, they told us, this time we didn't have to wear rubber gloves. It was like a heat injury is what he had up there. And I was like, heck yeah, I'm going to smoke this thing. And so I put on my little gardening gloves, little cut resistant gloves. I ran up that pole. It was like a C3. It was we call it a C3. It was a 3-phase pole and an angle.
Okay.
And so you had to cross over a couple things to get up there to it. And so I crossed over, threw my rope over, tied him up, but I didn't loop it twice because I was like, I'll just grip him, just get him down there real quick. Well, I had those little tiny thin gloves on, and as soon as I cut that sucker loose, it was like I was holding a hot iron. It just shredded my glove, shredded my hand. Very first event of the day, and they docked me like 10 points. They said I let him hit the ground too hard, which I did. I saw a video of it a little bit later when I got done, and when he hit, there was some lady walking by, and she's like, "Ooh!" Also, but it was great to get to go and compete in that, and I'll be doing it again this coming year. But that was
you should
fun.
Try and get to the international.
I'd love to, even just to go spectate it or something,
100%. It's a great time. Yeah, it's a really good event. I've been 5 times now, and yeah, man, it's just such a good time. It's such a cool, it's such a cool thing for an industry to have something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it is, and just to see, because these people are good. That's one thing that I kind of, I realized when I left my hometown and went to the Air Force. This little saying, I don't know if it's all over or not, but the big fish in a little pond, when I left my high school, I was a big fish in a little pond in my high school, and then in my hometown, and then at the Air Force, and then back here, and we may be really good in these little South Carolina co-ops. I might be one of the better ones, or there might be some, really good ones. But then you throw them in the international big fish, little pond,
Dude.
Sudden, whoa.
Yeah, it's next level. It's like a high school student getting the opportunity to just like show up and go to the Olympics or something. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
the first time I competed, I'm like, I didn't even train for it, like nothing, right? Show
Yeah.
up there and like, it's immediate how much you did not train and how much you don't know.
Yeah.
Dude.
It's crazy.
Is there any mentors or leaders that you want to highlight and maybe like what they taught you?
That training instructor, like I said earlier, that little phrase that he had, perfection is the goal, but excellence will do. I mean, that's been something that I kind of try to, when I'm healthy and I'm actually thinking about that kind of stuff, that's something that I kind of try to live my life by. Here at the co-op, there's a couple of guys like Chad Stone. He's one of the big bosses here and stuff like that. He is all about like basically the same thing, kind of like perfection. And obviously knowing that none of us can be perfect, he's not perfect either. But just making sure that you make your stuff look good. I mean, because there's like line work and then you can do line art at the same time. You can throw it up there and just it'll stick and it'll work. Or you can make it look nice and, be proud of that work at the same time. I had the opportunity to go and look at some other people's, one of the municipalities around here, look at their work and run call for them. Some of their stuff was so tangled up and messed up that you couldn't even tell if that was where the problem was or, if that's just the way it was supposed to look. At least with us, sometimes you show up, most of the guys care about what their work looks like. And so if like a tree falls and pulls something or something hits it and it makes it look weird, you can kind of pinpoint it a little bit easier. Be like, that's messed up. Let's go check that out over there, and see. And most of the time it might be where the, the fault is or something. But I think, mentors, I've got a bunch. I've got guys that have taught me so much. Since I've been here, I've got, my dad, he taught me a lot. And,
I love that about craft, like taking responsibility for being a craftsman. And lots of people don't think of the line trade like that. They think, because you're not like making swords or, forging something absolutely beautiful. It's beautiful to us that take pride in line work, but really power lines are freaking ugly to everyone else in the world. But, when you look back at the end of the day, you turn around and you go like, hey, I built that and it's beautiful. Like that's how I always wanted to be. And that's how I was taught by craftsmen. I was taught by tradespeople that, would tell me that, like, if you don't take pride in what you're doing and what you're building, then what are you doing? Like, go bag groceries or something, because this isn't for you. Like, here we take pride in what we do and we build it right. But yeah, like you said, you always still run into those guys who can make it work. You can slap it together and it'll hold and, looks good from my house kind of attitude, but that's trash. That's not the way we want to be. We're skilled trades for craft labor, man.
Well, that stuff's going to be there. We have our system's pretty old and before I got here and we're still working on, reconducting some of it and doing different stuff like that. But we'll go out and change a pole that's been there for 60 years.
Yeah.
And so, if you think about that like that, these new poles that we're putting in, who's to say that they're not going to be there for 60 years, and so you might as well, and they might be untouched for all of those 60 years, so you might as well try to make it look nice.
And isn't that amazing? Like, a carpenter or, a furniture maker will build a desk. It's pristine. It's beautiful. That desk lasts for 60 years, but it's inside a house in a controlled environment, respected, it's polished, it's all this stuff. You look at what we do, and if you build it right, it sits in the weather. Like it sits in the most extreme conditions. It goes through hurricanes and tornadoes and like rain and snow and sleet, like all of it. And it still stands for 60 years and looks okay and holds what it needs and does its job. That's freaking amazing. Man. All right, buddy. I've had you for over an hour. Appreciate your time. I want to rip through a few finish my sentence kind of things,
right.
as I'm sure you've heard in the last few episodes. Always curious to see what people's answers are to these. So if you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
My wife and I, we always talk about if we didn't live here, we'd either be in Charleston or we would move back out to Texas. We like Texas.
I love Texas. I really do. I've always struggled. Like I had potentially the opportunity to like move to Texas, right? It's hard because my kids live here. So I that would be too tough, but still the other thing that would be too tough is once you've lived near the mountains, it's too hard to like leave the mountains permanently.
Oh yeah.
The mountains and the ocean.
Oh.
I know Texas has the ocean too, but is it really? If you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would it be?
Oh, that's a great one. I don't know off the top of my head. I think there's this guy, I think he'd be pretty neat to talk to. There's a guy named John Levertine. And he, if I remember correctly, he was like the only load master to ever win the Medal of Honor.
Oh, dang.
And I think they were shooting a cannon out of there, or they had flares or something. Something happened, and this flare went off, this like high intensity, like burning flare went off inside of the plane, and he jumped on it and like tried to put it out and like moved over and threw it out of the door to get it out and saved the plane and saved his crew and stuff like that. But he ended up winning the Medal of Honor. I think he'd be a pretty interesting guy to
No
talk to.
kidding.
Yeah.
Dang. That's dope. That's a good one. If you weren't in this trade, what else would you be? Like if you could choose something else to be.
Well, I've been seeing before I got into this trade, I had looked at like maybe doing the welding and stuff like that. I thought that would be kind of interesting, kind of the same concept of like building and stuff. And then you had Kane on your podcast, and then I've seen some other things around too of like those iron workers and those guys, like that video that Joe Rogan had up with that guy climbing like in the 80s. That stuff like that seems pretty neat too. That would be something that I would have to, I'd probably have to move to go do something like that. I could be a welder around here and move if I needed to for that too. But one of those two things probably would be something that would interest me.
I've always thought that iconic photo of those iron workers in New York sitting on that beam, like
that's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. But is it that crazy? Like, coming like from our mental mindset, I could totally see myself and pretty much everybody I know being those guys.
You get used to it, and that's something like I didn't highlight it, I didn't say earlier, but when in our plane, I could go out, because they have ramping doors on it, I could go out and sit on the back, with like my feet dangling off or feet right there at the edge, flying at like 10,000 foot,
Yeah.
And that was pretty neat, so I can see, I guess, you just it's what you get used to.
100%. That's cool. From your perspective, what do you think is the most valuable tool in your kit?
I think our brain and learning from the older generation, learning the tips and tricks, learning the what's the word I'm looking for? The way that they figured out how to do it better, basically. just like you hear it said all the time, when you're young, and you're getting something out of the back of a pickup truck, you jump off, when you're done. As you get a little bit older, you start looking how to climb down, you start looking how to do these certain things. And, all that stuff is coming from experience. And I know most young people aren't going to listen. They're going to jump out the back of the pickup truck, they're going to come down the poles way too fast or whatever. But if we could kind of just learn from the older people and just, maybe sometimes they have easier ways to get things done. They figured out a better technique is what I'm looking for to get certain things done. I think that would be invaluable, because eventually if we don't listen and we don't remember, it'll be gone.
100%. I love that. That's good. All right. One more. Best advice you've received so far?
I think honestly this one will be more like biblical for me, and it's trying to live a life that honors Christ, and by doing that, if I strive to be more like him, I will be better for everybody else at the same time. By a byproduct of being more like him, I will be a better human. I'll be a better dad. I'll be a better worker. I'll be a better husband, a better father, a better son. And I think that's something that that Christ and the Bible is what I try to lead my life after. So,
dang, dude, it's good. It's great. I appreciate you reaching out and sharing your story. I think this is going to help some people and definitely provide some value. So thanks. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, guys. I hope you guys got some value out of that episode. I know I did. I'm super moved by stories like that, especially when they involve something that you do. So many times, like I said in that episode, so many times in my journey through this podcast, I've wanted to put the microphone down or question myself, why am I continuing with this? Why am I doing this? All that sort of stuff that's natural to creatives. But when you hear something like that, like Noah's story and how you had an impact in their life in that way, in a positive way, it really keeps you motivated to keep going. So if you could do me a favor and smash that subscribe button, hit that like button, all that good YouTuber stuff, it makes a big difference. If you could make sure you're subscribed or following on whatever platform you're listening or watching this on, it's greatly appreciated. Drop a comment if you feel so free to do so as well. All right, guys, take care. Peace.